Hello, good evening. This is Ademide. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Oh. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello, LSA, can you hear me? No? Okay.
I won't be disturbing you guys.
Hi, Oliver, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, Felix, how are you? It doesn't seem
good.
like the people in the hotel can hear.
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
Wow,
See you.
I better download my background while I'm here. All right, hold on. So I haven't heard from some of our panelists, so we'll just hope for the best that everybody shows up. Otherwise, we will proceed as is. Hold on.
Yeah, Biden is hopefully joining, but he said he might be in transit, having some flight, unexpected, I don't know, flight changes of sorts. So hopefully he'll be able to join.
Oh.
And you get him in addition to me. And if not, I've just been scrambling trying to learn his slides.
So he has a separate slideshow from you?
No, it's on the same deck. It's just I hadn't really rehearsed them or thought about them, but it should be fine.
Okay, that's fine. So do you want to try sharing your screen?
Yeah, can I? Because I'm in.
Yes. So
yeah.
I'm not the host, so there's very little I can do in that sense. But
okay.
You can probably try to share your screen. Felix, do you have a slideshow?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So after Oliver is done, then you can test yours. All right, great.
Okay.
Is that the right? Can you see the slides here or no?
But we can also see your slides, but we can also see your notes. So it's entirely possible that maybe you shared your entire screen rather than just.
Which one can you see now?
Only your slides.
Perfect. Okay. I'm in
Great.
I'm in the LSE, so I have to. Okay, so they're moving through. They're working, yeah, and it's just the slide.
They are.
Cool.
Yes.
I will stop that.
All right.
Will I?
Okay, so I'll also get a separate place for where I can read the bios from, because when you share this, Felix, do you want to try as well now?
Yeah, let me try.
Okay.
Hi, Felix, by the way. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. Good to see you too.
So I don't know. Okay.
Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So where is Beardo coming from?
I think he's coming from Lagos to London.
Oh, I
definitely
see.
coming. He's definitely on his way to London because it's.
Oh, okay.
His daughter's finishing school and is about to move on to university. But as to where he's coming from, I'm not sure. I've been getting some 2 a.m. emails from him, so I assumed he might in the US, but it might just be that he's working at 2 a.m. So who knows?
Okay. Yeah. All right. No worries. So we still have about 5 minutes. Felix, do you want to try moving your slides forward?
Yeah,
to make
let
sure?
me try. Okay.
Okay, looks like it's fine. So I didn't hear from Moses and I didn't hear from Laurent Fichard. So I don't know if they're coming. If they don't come, then this means you have more time.
More time for presentation or more time for Q&A? How would you like to?
Which would you prefer?
I think it depends.
For presentation. No time for presentation.
Okay.
I have
All
about
right.
40 slides.
40 slides.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, well, I think you can keep it between 15 and 20 minutes so we don't have to go on so long. I think it can be a little challenging to, always be so focused on in the Zoom presentation. So can you stop sharing your screen for a second? LSA, can you hear me? Whoever is in charge of my panel, there's no indication that you can, well, if everyone else can hear me, that's fine. So Felix, you're going to begin, and then we'll have Laurent if he comes, and then we'll have Moses, and then we'll have you, Oliver, and Bjorn. So,
Okay.
all right. I can still see your screen. Sorry, Felix. Okay, so so what I'm planning is that I'll just introduce our panel, and then I'll introduce each speaker before they go. I wasn't planning on doing the entire bios, but it looks like we will have more time. Did you guys make this panel together, or did Sahid build this panel?
It was built from our individual, well, from my understanding, I was just, we didn't build it ourselves. I think
Okay.
it's conceptualized
Okay,
around
great.
this nice life in motion theme.
Okay, good. Just making sure. Laurent, can you hear us? Welcome. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening. Hello. Nice
How
to
are
meet
you?
you. Welcome. Welcome. I am good. Welcome. Welcome to our panel. Great. So there's even more of us. Laurent, I don't have a bio from you, so
Oh, yeah,
I'm just
sorry.
going to read.
I
No, that's
totally
fine. I'm
forgot
just
to
going
say.
to read.
I'm so sorry.
That's no problem. I'll just read the short sentences I found and stuff. So, but that's no problem. Do you have a slideshow?
Yeah,
Would you like to test it now?
yeah, why not? Is that okay?
Great, but right now I can see your comment. Okay, good, better. This is better. And you can advance it. Can you try advancing it? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So it works. So
Okay.
now that we have 3 presentations, I'm hoping that we can keep it to about 15 to 20 minutes each, right?
Yeah,
So that way everybody can have a chance to speak, and depending on our audience, then we can have a Q&A with the people who come to hear us. I know it's quite late already here in Lagos, but I know that this is best for those who are, let's say, in North America, for instance.
Yeah, yeah. So you are at Lagos. You are in Lagos at the moment.
Yes, I am.
Currently.
Yes, I am.
So fortunate.
Yes, I know. Yes, I have some research to do after the conference, and I had already, like everybody else, was hoping that probably maybe the strike would be over by now.
Yeah.
Reckless optimism.
Well, next week, hopefully by next week, the strike should be over.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's good for us, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, ASU is probably meeting with the government this week to resolve the crisis. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to hear. All right, so it's 7:30. We could wait a few minutes to see if we attract anyone to come. Otherwise, it will be a really informal conversation between us that people will have the benefit of watching later. So if it's okay with everyone, I will say let's give everybody 5 minutes. How about that?
Okay.
and see what happens.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, for some reason, I can't see the list of attendees. There were a couple of people, but they disappeared. I'm clicking, but nothing is showing up. Okay, they're back. Hi, everyone. We will begin in about 2 minutes. In preparation for our beginning, I'm just going to cue things up. And then Felix, after Felix, I'm hearing some background noise from you. Felix?
Yeah, she said that the noise is disturbing.
Okay.
I'm presenting now.
Okay, so Felix, you're going first. So if you can encourage the people in the background, or if you can find a more quiet spot. We still have 1 minute.
Okay.
That would be super helpful.
No problem.
Okay, great. So we'll give it another minute and then we can begin.
Thanks.
Okay, folks. All right, great. So good evening, everyone, and good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may find yourself. I am Ademide Adelusi Adeli, and I'm the chair of our panel this evening titled Life in Motion, Urban Transportation and City Livability. We're going to go in the order in the schedule. So first, we're going to have Felix Agiola from Unilag, and he's going to present a paper called Hawking, Pickpocketing and Armed Robbery on the Move, Traffic Holdups and Criminality in Contemporary Lagos. I will introduce him and then he will begin. So Felix Oludare Agiola, PhD, is a lecturer in the Department of History and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos. His field of specialization cuts across African history, economic history, social history, political economy, and development studies. His latest research interests focus narrowly on rural and urban livelihood and sustainability. Felix is the winner of the 2021 Brahamon Bello Prize for the best PhD thesis in African and Diaspora Studies at the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies at the University of Lagos. Good evening, Felix, and welcome. You have about 17 minutes, and I don't want to have to interrupt you.
Thank you. It's an enormous privilege to be here tonight, particularly presenting my paper with some of the iconic figure as far as social history and history of crime in Lagos is concerned. I can see Professor Lauren Fauchard, who is widely read, and Oliver is here, and the panelists. And so I'm quite impressed to be here this evening. The title of my paper is Hawking, Pickpocketing, and Traffic, Armed Robbery on the Move, Traffic Hold-ups and Criminality in Contemporary Lagos. The article is an ethnographic investigation of the intersection of hawking, pickpocketing, and armed robbery, and various criminality in traffic hold-ups in contemporary Lagos. Here I interrogate the dominant perspectives about the dynamics of hawking criminality in urban highways in Lagos, basically from the 2000s up to 2022, or since the transition to democratic rule. Of course, it is clear that Nigerian media are quite replete with stories of hundreds of urban residents daily molested and harassed by a group of criminal gangs operating majorly on urban highways, especially traffic hold-ups in Lagos. So in fact, that's one of the major problems with living in Lagos in the contemporary sense is the daily harassment of hawkers, who disguise criminals who disguise as hawkers, perpetrating all manner of fraud. Just in December 2020, I was kidnapped in Lagos myself, while cruising my car on a Saturday evening, with a hawker disguising to be selling, bottled water. I'm working with the syndicate, other groups dressed in army uniform, and distracted me. And before I knew what was happening, some guys were already in my car. I was kidnapped to a factory and all of that. So it's a recurring incident, problem in Lagos. Of course, this actually is not a new event in the history of Lagos. Although hawking actually gained momentum in Lagos, after the adoption of the structural adjustment program in the 1980s, but it was less severe until the last decade when, with the advent of sophisticated mobile phones such as the high-tech computers and Blackberries and iPhones, that criminality are transposed to an alarming rate in Lagos. So this has been attributed to the growth of hawking, which has become a viable survival strategy for a large army of migrants and unemployed youths coming to Lagos. With the growth of the hawking sector, criminality has now shifted from the rural slums and ghettos to major neighborhoods, which constitute a major problem. My research combines ethnographic field notes with sources, with historical sources such as newspapers, bulletins, and magazines, crime reports, and the burgeoning literature on the phenomenon. The data presented in this article were also collected from the scenes of hawking activities, the major scenes, as centers of hawking activities, hangout of specific area boys, in Lagos, and some correctional centers where I was able to interview some convicted criminals. And the gap is basically that existing study is actually lacking an intersection of hawking control mechanisms and criminality in Lagos. Only scant attention has been paid to specific ethnographic contexts of hawking, and the abuse of hawking for pickpocketing and criminality in Lagos. So it is imperative to probably investigate the synergy between hawking and various forms of criminality in contemporary Lagos. And I argue in this paper that the phenomenon of pickpocketing and armed robbery in traffic hold-up is not is not an emergent feature of social disorganization complicated by macroeconomic problems or government failures in Nigeria. argument is that contemporary pickpockets and armed robbery, are natural symptoms of a series of intertwining and complex socioeconomic problems in Nigerian society. And so it actually is increasing as a result of the contemporary quest, the inordinate quest of several uneducated miscreants and migrants flooding into Lagos. Their quest for fast wealth is actually the roots of the crime. So I demonstrated that the burgeoning gravitation of gangsters and migrants towards materialism actually is the driving force behind the rate of criminality. While it is true that the deplorable socioeconomic condition in Lagos, urban poverty actually is a factor, but criminality is been fueled basically as a result of the quick rich syndrome and the rise of consumerist and materialist culture among the uneducated, the neglected rural majority, if you like. So I also demonstrate that apart from the hawkers who are actually involved in criminality on the highways and the traffic holdups, there are other economic actors such as the street cults, various streets cult gangs, the hoodlums, area boys, who also infiltrate into the public spaces and take advantage of unsuspecting targets. So there's also the dimension of the collaborations between the ICT, the internet fraudsters and the pickpockets. So I also demonstrated the connection between the G-boys, who actually collect the debit cards and the mobile phones from the pickpockets and carry out several financial frauds, and also with several unscrupulous officials of banks. So these are some of the issues I contended with in this paper. So in spite of a lack of commensurate employment opportunities, Lagos continues to experience the most rapid rate of urban population than any other region in the country and even in Africa. Despite that urban employment has been problematic for the skilled and unskilled labor, urban livelihoods continue to shrink due to population growth and rapid rural urban migration, especially with regards to rural poverty. So majority of these people who come to Lagos have no alternative means of survival than to resort to criminality. So with extreme poverty, it is very possible for the people to actually resort to hawking. And after a while, due to the unsustainability of the hawking enterprise, majority of these migrants also take to criminal activities such as pickpocketing. And so a geo-divisional patterns, I actually did a mapping through questionnaire of the 5 administrative districts in Lagos, namely Ikorodu, Badagry, Ikeja, Lagos Island, and it was found that Ikorodu has about 27.7% of pickpocketing and robbery incidences in Lagos, while Badagry has about 5% and Ekpe. The most notorious spots for this kind of criminality are Ikeja, and Lagos Island as a result of the public rowdiness and traffic congestions, which are actually endemic in some of this area. And I'll try to break all of this down smartly. In Lagos Island, it was found that hawkers really they're really involved in pickpocketing, and traffic robbery. So this kind of crimes are perpetrated by the area boys, the court groups, the Eye and the Aye boys who use the avenues of their clashes, to unleash mayhem on the civil population. So hoodlums, pickpockets, targeted of unsuspecting victims, in crowded spaces in Lagos Island, and in the night, they often attack stranded commuters. In Ikorodu, pickpockets pickpocketing and traffic holdups are linked to, so the activities of hawkers, who actually, operate in the major traffic spots. Of course, Ikorodu is gradually transforming into the epicenter, of criminality, of this kind of criminality as a result of, the activities of several cult groups also in Ikorodu. While Badagry is, there is a little rate of criminality, of this kind of criminality in Badagry. Ikeja has been the major workshop of pickpocket and traffic robbers, as a result of the activities of or the rate of traffic congestion in Ikeja district. As a matter of fact, 80% of the hawkers in the traffic holdups, are found to be of Igbo extraction, mostly from Ebonyi State. This is according to the Lagos State Environmental Sanitation Corps. So, for example, in 2020, the Lagos State authorities apprehended about 3,040 hawkers allegedly involved in criminality. This are composed of 95 females and 2,525 males. The figure also increased in 2021, when additional 2,850 hawkers, involved in pickpocketing and armed robbery, were also attacked, were also arrested in Lagos. So these hawkers, it was found that majority of these hawkers involved in criminality, destroy, public infrastructures, to be able to perpetrate their heinous crimes, clustering around bus stops and garages, and creating traffic holdups, in order to make criminality, to thrive. In Ikeja, for example, and Lagos Island divisions, some of the traffic, hawkers create buffer zones under bridges where they store dangerous ammunitions, including knives and swords and stones, which they use for diverse criminal activities. In some areas, hawkers also use various weapons to harass or intrude into a moving vehicle in a bid to kidnap. In fact, that actually happened to me also once in Lagos. So majority of the pickpocket cases at the magistrate courts in Lagos over the past 1 decade, are actually linked to the activities or the connection between hawkers and other criminal gangs in Lagos. And apart from the hawkers, also there are also the non-hawking gangs, the hoodlums, who migrate from places like notorious places like Mushin and Songwater, to carry out their criminal activities, basically pickpocketing in Lagos. And available data also shows that there are also a number of motor park workers, basically the conductors who engage in this kind of criminality. They work as conductors in the day and resort to criminality, to pickpocketing at night. And one of the major strategies is basically to trail their victims and snatch their phones from their victims, probably in the moving vehicle, or to attack commuters who are stranded on the highway, fixing their cars. And there are quite a number of other trying to move fast. Another interesting dimension to the criminality in contemporary Lagos is the adoption of voodoo. Most of the criminals now employ now go intense. They adopt several diabolical incisions and rituals, in a way to prevent, to facilitate, smooth robbery operations. And the adoption of voodoo has actually also contributed, it has actually transformed the scale of criminality. And so with this, people consulted, like the young man on the screen, was interviewed, and he narrated how he traveled as far as Oyo to patronize, his native doctor once in a month, for him to be fortified, against police and against most of them. So when I remember when my phones and my wallet was removed from my pocket. So one of them just touched my body as if was making a with 2 phones. So the adoption of voodoo has also transformed the scale of criminality in contemporary Lagos.
Hello, Felix. Am I the only one who can't hear you?
No, I cannot hear.
Okay.
I cannot
Okay.
hear.
You're back. Felix, you're back, but we lost your presentation. Okay, so we will, if he doesn't come back in the next,
Hello?
okay, good, he's back. Okay, good,
Okay.
you're back. So Felix,
right,
you have
yes.
about 3 more minutes.
Okay, another
Welcome
dimension
back.
to criminality is the involvement of cyber crime, cyber criminals, the Yahoo who collect the SIM cards and the debit cards from the pickpocket, to transact, make financial transactions from the victims' accounts and all of that. I would probably move faster. Oh. So there's also the act of vandalism by the hoodlums and criminals vandalizing public infrastructure. But lastly, I will probably speak about the political response to criminality. There's been a lot of improvement since 1999, with the introduction of the Operation Sweep, anti-crime squad, which was introduced by the military governor of Olagunsoye Oyinlola and Buba Marwa. But since 1999, the anti-crime squad has been transformed, in a way, that they will conform to democratic principles in terms of their judicial processing of criminals. And there's been, in spite of the fact that there's been a lot of effort made by the law enforcement agencies, pickpocketing and criminality continues to increase in Lagos due to the level of rural migration and lack of opportunities for the majority of these people who come into Lagos. As there's no time to probably, you can see in 2021 alone, there's a rising figure in the rate, in the level of robbery incidents in the first quarter and in the second quarter. And so the phenomenon continues to rise in Lagos as the day, and this has actually been fueled by not just the economic crisis, but also the gravitation of the Nigerian youth basically towards materialism and the advent of sophisticated gadgets like computer devices, and the marketability of all of these products also has actually fueled criminality. Majority of these youths actually operate with their syndicates in the computer village, where they get instant reward for most of these devices obtained. So I think I should just probably my time is up. I believe so. Let me know.
Yes, we will have more time to elaborate in the Q&A. Thank you so much, Felix. And I'm really sorry to hear about your experiences with this firsthand. Okay, so welcome to all our attendees. We are moving in order of the program. All right, where is my sheet? And I'm suggesting that we keep our Q&A to the end of the conversation so that we can have a broader conversation. Okay, next we have Professor Laurent Fouchard, who needs very little introduction. He is a historian and political scientist and is a research professor at the National Foundation for Political Science. He's the author of several books and articles, most recently in 2020, of Classify, Exclude, and Police, Urban Lives in South Africa and Nigeria, which is published by Wiley-Blackwell. Okay, so Professor Fouchard, please, you have the floor. I would say we use about 18 minutes, so we have enough time for Q&A.
Thank you very much, David. It's very nice, and thank you also for organizing this panel. Yeah, a minute. Yeah, maybe I can. So I edited this paper, Overview on the Political Economy of Motor Parks in Lagos. And well, this is something like a new fieldwork that I started something like 2 years ago. I I've partly published some of the results in the book that you just mentioned at the beginning, and this is one of the chapters. And I focus especially on the role of the National Union of Road Transport Workers, NURTW, in focusing especially on the everyday operation of the union, rather than looking at the classical understanding of power union. What is classical of understanding of power unions, according to scholars working on unions? When you work on union, you look at the structural power, which is capacity of bargaining of the union. You look at the associational power, which is more or less the capacity of going on strike, and you have many other power like capacity to block roads, or to organize or trigger social movements. And of course, if we think to the capacity of NURTW to mobilize people, especially against the oil subsidy removal, there is this power, but this is not this power I'm interested in. I'm rather looking at a more classical understanding of power, which is a everyday capacity of a group which has a power, in that case NURTW, over subordinate people. So, and especially what I'm looking at, it's looking at the motor park. NURTW activities became very powerful with the IMF neoliberal policies, so starting from the 1980s, and especially more with the return of democracy, because especially in Lagos during the 1990s, the NURTW were not allowed so much to work in the motor parks, which is not anymore the case in Lagos. I mean, with the return of democracy in 1999, it really came to replace many local governments. So in Lagos, in most places, but also in many other cities in Nigeria and other places in Nigeria. And there are many reasons for that, but I'm not entering into the detail. This story is partly known. We can consider that NURTW work as a classical, so a few theoretical insight, but I won't be theoretical. I will rather present the stuff and the empirical stuff. So the classical twilight institutions, according to Christian Lund, because NURTW has a kind of provisional authority over the motor park. An authority because actually NURTW more or less police the motor park, so decide which routes can be taken, decide at what time the work is starting, who is allowed to come in the motor park, register the drivers, police the drivers, police other type of commercial vehicles operating. So the union has this authority, but it is provisional in the sense that it is not supposed to do that. It is not supposed to do that because in the Constitution, as you know, well, or if you don't know, it's clear that in the Constitution's 1999 Constitution, the capacity to run and manage motor park is in the hand of the local government. Okay, so this is provisional in the sense that or at any time, the governor, most of the time, rather than local government, can suspend the work of the NURTW. So it happened in Ibadan, for instance, 4 years ago, and it's in the moment happening in Lagos. So we can consider, in that sense, that NURTW is twilight institutions, mimics the state in some instance, but do also other things at other moments. And the last point I would like to mention is the fact that the NURTW works also thanks to the suspension of the law. I don't want to mean here that the law is never implemented because there is a kind of weak state in Nigeria. I don't think that's the right reading of NURTW. It's rather better to think that the NURTW works because the local government authorities or even the state authority allow NURTW to work despite what the constitution say. And this difference is quite important. So my paper is based mainly on a set of interviews made with civil servants in Lagos and Ibadan, but here we present only Lagos. And I got the authorization by the Secretariat of the Union in Lagos. Here is a 2020 authorization, and without that authorization, actually, it was impossible to get information from local-based union leaders who were only able to speak after seeing that later. So with some colleagues, we got a number of interviews with local leaders and members, and we also witnessed a number of, or we also did a number of observation of ordinary activities in motor park. And I did that with the strong support of Joseph Ayudokun from University of Ibadan and Joseph Akinyi from University of Lagos. Both of them are PhD students and research assistants. And I would like also to take that opportunity to thank both of them for their incredible support, and also for Joseph Ayudokun for his prompt recovery, and for Joseph Akinyi. I'm so pleased that he's going to Cornell University in September. So practically, NURTW is before her a massive bureaucratic and powerful bureaucratic organization, which operates on motor park as a kind of unofficial tax collector over all the commercial drivers going through the motor park. This is very well known by everybody, but this has to be reminded because this is the basis of the power of NURTW. It's a bureaucratic organization in the sense that he's highly hierarchical. So here is the Secretariat of NURTW Lagos State Chapter at Agege. And this is the place of power of the union in Lagos. Actually, what the union members said about the secretariat, they said that's the state, just to give an idea of how they represent themselves, NURTW. And at the top of NURTW is, as all the Lagosian knows, the chairman is the Mosilu Akisanya, aka MC Oluomo, who graduated from an Agbero, so an area boy, in the 1970s and 1980s, into a treasurer of the Lagos State chapter in early 2000, into 2 years ago, October 2019, actually as a chairman. And here, I mean, he's very powerful because he's the one who can remove or promote any union leaders working in motor park. Here, this is a poster made by the people in one motor park to congratulate the success of MC Oluomo in being promoted as or elected as chairman. So this is the top of the power at the secretariat. Of course, NURTW operates at branch and unit levels in motor parks, and there are thousands of them, and this is where the power of NURTW lay. It's an authority which is implemented on a daily basis on all the drivers coming into the motor park, in raising different fees, dues, and taxes. There are very different names for that. And just to give an idea of the power of the union at the branch and the unit level, if you take the motor park of Obalende, which is quite a powerful and important motor park in Lagos Island. So you have 16 routes, you have 9 branches, you have 15 units, and you have around 15 to 20 members in each executive committee in each unit. It's making more or less 200 and 300 EXCO members just for Obalende. So to just give you an idea of how the member in position of power within the union, even if it's at the lower level, is quite impressive in a motor park like Obalende. It's of course much more important in bigger motor park like in Oshodi. And so the power of the NURTW is exercised by the EXCO, the executive committee, who has a chairman, a secretary, a treasurer, and a number of members, ex-officio members. Okay, so this is a key position of power in the motor park. And of course, at the bottom of the union are the Agbero, which is, of course, this is a Yoruba name, which has changed meaning over time. It initially meant calling passengers. It's now considered as a derogatory term, mainly because it means more or less being violent in collecting taxes in motor park. And what is interesting is the fact that all union members interviewed never use the word agbero, and agberos themselves or tax collectors never use the term themselves to qualify themselves. They qualify themselves as park attendants, as workers, as tax collectors, and this is quite important. So this is a practical things. I mean, the hierarchy of the union from the agbero to MCL there is a kind of hierarchy of power, which is central and which is important. So practically, what is providing a legitimacy to NURTW is the fact that behind, despite doing something that is totally illegal and totally unconstitutional, actually NURTW work for the government because it raised their taxes for either local government or in Lagos, the local council development authorities. As you see, that's the first ticket which is given and provided when a day starts. It's collecting taxes for and on behalf of the local government. And that money is going back to the local government once the bunch of tickets are sold. So that's the first thing they are doing, and that's important. They're not making money out of that, but the local government provide a kind of legitimacy in authorizing NURTW members in selling out the local government tickets. Okay. So what is most important for the union is actually to expand profits. So that's an expression that I'm used. And so what one central part of the business, I'm not saying that that's the only business that NURTW do, but one of the central part of the business of NURTW is to raise fees, tax, and dues taken from the drivers on a daily basis with very different terms, with always coming back as suggested by Daniel Agbigboa in one of his papers. And so all these forms of money and dues and taxes are non-receipted fees most of the time. And so they are, but they are in a way compulsory and taken by the agbero tax collectors over the drivers on a daily basis. So we may have the impression that it's totally arbitrary, and there is a kind of arbitrariness in taking that money. But I discovered that in most motor parks I visited, so the 7 in Lagos, but also in Lebanon, there are actually weekly targets. So weekly targets are targets fixed by the union branch, the branch EXCO, which decide that, okay, that motor park should pay an appropriate amount according to the number of routes and the number of vehicles plying that route on a day. And so, according to this calculation, they calculate a weekly target, and they said the union EXCO members said to the union unit members, okay, you have to give us that amount of money every week. And that amount of money, of course, goes back to the branch and then to the secretariat. So that's more or less how it works, and this reveals actually a kind of integration of new managerial techniques, which is typical of neoliberal practices, which is based on norm of efficiency, on profitability, and on individual responsibility and self-responsibility. So, and I found that quite ironical that a union which is supposed to defend actually workers actually use that kind of managerial techniques in raising money. But of course, this is not fixed. And there is also a lot of patronage, as you can imagine, in the motor parks. And so when a big patron like MCL Uomo became state chairman, he can give some exception or give back some money, especially to the members of the union, which are more or less is very loyal members. So members in Oshodi, for instance, MCL Uomo came from that very motor park. so initially, a number of branch chairmen told me that MC give back their money because actually they know them. He knows them and don't want to be too harsh on them. But in another motor park, like in one in Barga, that where I did also interview, actually that's just the opposite. He said, okay, that's the target, that's the weekly target. I mean, if you're not able to meet it, to meet it, okay, we are going to suspend your work, and we are going to fire some of the EXCO members working in that unit. So it could be very harsh, and once again, a way of managing the people, which really looks like a kind of a very neoliberal organization and bureaucratic organization. How long do I have, Ademide?
You have about 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
I put
Okay.
in the chat.
So
Yes.
that's fine. So if we, I don't, here I have no time to say where the monies go. And that's not a big complicated, that's not a so complicated issue, but part of the money goes to the union. Okay, part of the money stays at the unit level. Okay, in order to pay actually the members of the unit level. So if you have 3 members, the 3 members are paid, including the ag bureau. If there are 20, they are paid, and of course the number of members in the unit depend on the number of cars and of motor parks, the numbers of minibuses, and the number of fruits that are used in that motor park. Okay, part of the money goes to the union, part of the money goes to local government officials, and part of the money goes to the police. And I also discovered that actually a large amount of money goes to the police. So initially, they didn't want to mention that, especially in 2018. But when I came back in 2020, actually, we discovered, especially with Joseph Agni, that it was a kind of daily routine. I mean, you see policemen coming from all bodies of all the Nigerian police bodies, so including SARS, I mean, the federal police, all the police bodies more or less come to motor parks to take some money, either on a weekly basis or sometimes on a daily basis. And moreover, also the motor parks, the union also gives some money on a monthly basis at the police station, at the first police station close by. And okay, so that's looks like a classical corruption thing, but we can also think to this exchange of money as a form of protections provided by the union for the drivers against the police. So here I explain that in 1 minute. If you give some money and if you build some relationship with some police officers, when your driver is stopped by a policeman on the road and stop, and his car is impounded and himself is arrested, now comes the union chairman most of the time, or the secretary, or somebody in the EXCO, who come and phone to the police officer who is responsible of this policeman and try to negotiate the price of the offense. So, and instead of paying the offense, which might be 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 naira, actually they paid a bribe of 5,000 naira. So the capacity of the union to change an offense into a bribe is something which is a form of protection which is given to the drivers against the police. So we can discuss that probably in the Q&A section, but just a provisional conclusion in 1 minute. The first thing is that there have been privatization and deregulation of transport since the 1980s, but this has allowed transport union to strengthen its power over motor parks, but power in terms of capacity to exercise an authority over all the members working in the motor parks, the drivers and the ag bureau. So this is another dimension of the union which is not really addressed in the existing literature. The second thing is that there is a kind of free market-oriented practices that have been expanded thanks to the NURTW leaders. So like revenue targets, which is for me the most one of the most example of this. free-oriented free market-oriented practices. And this has worsening the working condition of low union members like bearers and drivers compared to what, if you read the literature, what the literature was saying in the 1970s, I mean, the condition of ag bearer were less difficult than the existing one. We can discuss that. And at the end, NERTW, this is my last point, sorry, and thank you, Davide. It's not, I mean, the motor park is not a totally free market zone. It's not a neoliberal place, because actually it's not working like a free market zone, but it's working as a place to accumulate revenues to be redistributed to union members, local government officials, and the police. And it protects minimalist drivers against more police extortion, but we have to think about this in the larger environment of Nigeria. Thank you, Ademide, and sorry for being too long.
Oh, no problem. We are actually missing a panelist, so it's going to be okay, I believe. We will still have at least 25 minutes of Q&A.
Okay.
Thank you for that presentation. Okay, so Oliver, you're up next. Should we expect Biodu? I will introduce you both. And also to our audience members, please, we'll be collecting your questions in the chat. We already have a lively chat going on, also Q&A. So please reserve your questions to the end so that everyone can speak individually and respond to questions in general. So our next panelist.
Sorry, Adam. Yeah, I think it'll just be me. I think Biden might join for the Q&A if he can get connection, but he's still in transit, I believe.
Okay, no problem. Well, so next we have Oliver Harman, who is a cities economist for the International Growth Center's Cities That Work initiative that's based at the Blavatnik School of Government at the University of Oxford, and he's also associate staff at the London School of Economics. He's also a Clarendon Scholar studying the governance and financing of sustainable urban development in low-income and fast-growing cities. In these roles, he attempts to help bridge the gap between research and policy, both generating and translating economic literature into clear urban policy guidance for emerging country city governments. Oliver engages with local government ministries and mayoral teams, primarily across sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Europe. Examples include local government reform in Guyana, urban resilience and waste management in Ghana, municipal finance in Malawi, Senegal, Somaliland, and sustainable urbanization in Bangladesh. His three thematic interests include financing, sustainable urban development, global value chains for regional upgrading, and climate change in cities. Prior to this, Oliver spent 4 years in the private sector on large-scale urban regeneration projects in London. You can find a complete overview of his work at his website, oliverharman.me. Now, he's supposed to be joined by, and he will be, I hope, joined by Biodun Otunla, who is the founding managing director of Planet Projects Limited, PPL, a leading and fast-growing engineering, procurement, construction, and management firm, where he leads a team that provides a wide range of solutions to transportation problems in Nigerian cities across bus, BRT, rail, water transport, and traffic engineering, over the entire value chain of studies, planning, engineering designs, construction and operations and management. He's an experienced engineer, transport planner, and projects manager who's been involved in large-scale infrastructure and public projects, including the largest bus terminal in Africa, which is the Oshodi Transport Interchange Project, Lekki Port Projects, Ogun Light Rail Projects, Lagos Strategic Transport Master Plan, the Lagos Blue Light Line Rail Project, the Lekki Junction Improvement Works, and I'll stop here with the Lagos Bus Rapid Transport Project. Felix, I think you have to mute yourself, please, or maybe that's Biodun. So I'll stop here, and Oliver, you have about 20 minutes so that we can have enough time for Q&A.
Sure. And I think Biden might have joined there, judging by there's now 2 Olivers, and I did share with him my link. So that might be him on the other one.
Okay, fantastic. We're welcome, Biodun. You haven't missed your panel. You are here. So I'll hand it over to you both.
Wonderful. Yeah, so thank you all. And yeah, it's a pleasure speaking at the Lagos Studies Association. I joined the keynote in the opening remarks earlier. And let's go. Okay. And yes, from what, it's a kind of new organization for me, but one as indicated as a scholar who focuses on sustainable urban development in emerging cities. I hope for more engagement with, both for the content I've heard today and early this afternoon, but also as a lot of people were indicating the good food that is shared at the conference. So hopefully in future I can join you in Lagos. So yeah, today I'm going to be presenting some joint work with with Biden, Otonola, myself, and Seb Kritikos. So this was kind of a joint project between Planet Projects and us here at the International Growth Centre, University of Oxford. And it's looking at the kind of 20 years of transport reforms, both the BRT and the Danfo. So yeah, hopefully I'll kind of give you a sense of some of these reforms and what drove at them. I suppose a little bit by background and motivation, I work in a policy-orientated research organization, so all of our questions are driven by policymakers, and we focus on economic growth broadly, and particularly, yes, emerging cities, as I've tried to indicate by this diagram. And the question that was a lot of our kind of policymakers was asking us about how, they as emerging cities can better deliver levels, or deliver better levels of transport connectivity and for productivity and prosperity. And so we started looking around, and we chose Lagos as a case study because of its because of it being the first bus rapid transit in Africa, because of this high investment in infrastructure and public transport from the state government, a kind of a unique traffic management focus and some interesting transport governance reforms. So we kind of drilled that down into specifically looking at how Lagos did reform its transport system and what effects did it have and what drove them. And for this, we kind of wanted to take similarly a kind of a mixed methods kind of explanatory case study that was going to, I think just because it was important to view this reform in the context of which it is set, and hopefully with this kind of process tracing, understand a little bit the temporal sequence of events, as well as the kind of fine-grained knowledge that is important for that. I mean, so the data was kind of broadly, theoretical literature, of course, a fair bit of this project funder evaluation and assessment documentation, legislative analysis, descriptive analysis, and policy implementers, some semi-structured interviews and some quantitative metrics as well. And yes, I was reflecting on the process and was reflecting on some of the opening remarks and the keynote today, and was kind of following Akeem Akinwale's analogy of the seed sprouting into a tree of the LSE, and then Olawale Albert's kind of continuation asking about what are the kind of, how did the seed lead to certain roots? And I was thinking of the roots to reform and the trunk of reform. And Olawale also was speaking about the fruits or the benefits from this tree, albeit reform. And I think that's kind of the process we try to look at, as well as looking at both the seeds of some of these change, but then what were these kind of core trunks of this change, and what were the kind of necessary roots in order to drive it, and then the fruits and the benefits of this reform as well. I think this is an interesting piece of work, in particularly with the consideration of the first two presentations, thinking about how kind of traffic management or congestion influences and interacts with hawking, and there was a lot of discussion on the amount of kind of theft that goes on because of slow moving traffic, but also the role of the transport union as well in some of these changes, I think is interesting. So yes, that's sort of our process. I'll briefly talk about some of the initial findings, and then I'll hand it on to Biden. So until 2008, Lagos was one of the only major world cities without any formal mass transit system. It had kind of very low public transport capacity, which was a common issue, and despite its population, it was ranked one of the worst for public transport in 2010. And as is often the case, a strikingly large amount of transport was done through walking through cities, and of course a lot of this kind of informal transport we talk about, Danfo minibuses in Lagos, but similarly to matatus in Nairobi and Kampala, or dala-dalas in Dar es Salaam. That's kind of the core of these informal transport systems that we see. And yeah, as I said, this is kind of predominantly provided by Danfo minibuses, and which were of extreme value to the average citizen, hence the kind of the high ridership we see. But in a fast-growing city like Lagos, you're not able to truly transform mobility because transport can kind of shape a city, because these minibuses are very much a reactive service that responds to the growth of the structured city, rather than structuring it themselves. Rather than being the routes to change, they are and the trunks to change, I suppose. They are they react to how the city grows. And of course, there were consequences for this, right? The Danfos were associated with major challenges on kind of low quality service, a lot of time waiting in queues, kind of poor maintenance leading to breakdowns, accidents. I think by 2008 there were 2 to 3 accidents per week on the Danfo system, and the limited lay-bys and sheltering and policing, I think, kind of interacts with some of this hawking and some of this kind of street theft and unrelated kind of vehicle theft we were talking about earlier. I think this is an interesting study. Interesting headline here. You know, Lagos residents waste 3 of 10 years in traffic, and I think this was particularly much the case in part due to the geography of the city and kind of how the lakes interacted with the city and provided certain pinch points. And I'm just going to move on. And yeah, I think that was kind of what I wanted to leave it with, and hand over to you, Biden, to take through some of these kind of the wider reforms that we found were kind of necessary in this our research. Just tell me when you want me to move on to the slides, Biden. We should be able to move through.
Okay, all right. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I couldn't put on the video because of the poor network. Essentially, in doing this work with IGC and University of Oxford, we've looked at Lagos traffic and transport issue in 4 dimensions. So the first one is the state of the infrastructure, which we believe was not adequate. And then government over the years tend to invest a lot of money on road, BRT facilities, bus shelters, and of course, traffic management system as well. And then the other element of this is the framework, which is regulatory and institutional system that were put in place. So as part of the reform, you have institutions like LASMA, you have institutions like LAMATA that came on board in the process of reforming the transport system. If you look at the period under which these studies covered, it's from 1999 to 2019. You notice that prior to that time, we don't have a lot of institutions in place. So the effort of reforming Lagos transport system led to the establishment of these institutions that I mentioned earlier. That is LASMA, LAMATA, Lagos Transport Institute, Drivers Institute, and so on and so forth. And these are the highlights of each of the administration from 1999. I mean, one thing we must give to Lagos is consistency. And of course, every administration tends to improve over the other. There was the first one in 1999, which was Governor Tinubu. So he laid the foundation, by setting up a lot of these institutions that we mentioned earlier. And then we saw the establishment of LASMA in year 2000, LAMATA in year 2002. And then, of course, its STMP, Strategic Transport Master Plan, was developed. Even today, we see a number of railway projects that are coming up, the Red Line and the Blue Line. They all arose from the 2005 STMP. So go ahead, Oliver, please. Next slide. Yes. Oh, so these are some of the progress that we saw over time as a result of the reform that I mentioned earlier on. You can see the BRT in the first photograph there, which was done very quickly within the regime of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And this was done then at a very cheap price, 1.7 million per kilometer. And then operational revenue very, very quickly was recovered. And it was supported by World Bank and then, of course, the AFDB at that time. What Lagos government did then was to finance the infrastructure, while banks and local banks supported the financing of the buses and the rolling stock. In addition to that, World Bank actually sponsored the study, the feasibility studies of the BRT, and then it gave quick cooperation. And it was the first BRT in Africa. So a lot of other countries have come to Lagos to look at it. Uganda have been there. Even the South Africa BRT was modeled over the Lagos. They all came, Ghana have been here. More than 7 African countries have come to actually look at it. And then they modeled theirs. Of course, they improved it. And it's also worth mentioning that this BRT have gone further than this level. This was the first one, which was called BRT Lite. Today, you have CCTV on the corridor. Today, you have electronic payment system. Today, you have an extension of this BRT to Ikorodu Road. And these are all things that have happened. We must not have noticed them, but indeed, these are steady, consistent progress that have been made in public transport in Lagos over time. Next slide, please. Yeah, so, and then one of the success of this BRT, which we must also recognize, is the fact that the informal sector, which we will call DANFO and the NURTW, were also integrated into the operations. Today, they are called Amalgamated Transport Union. for the first BRT line that was launched on the Ikorodu Road, they were the ones that were actually the operators because you cannot displace them. So one of the things that was part of the design was to ensure that we have minimal disruption to the current operator. We don't want to displace them. They are the people that have been running the business. So what government intentionally did then was to encourage them. They formed a cooperative, provided guarantees to them, and they were able to access loan from bank to buy the first set of rolling stock for the first BRT of the Ikorodu corridor. And it turned out to be very successful. Everything took 15 months from conception to operation, and within 100 days, we were able to do 9.7 million people, and of course, over 29 million people, and then it averaged 200,000 passengers per day by the time the BRT became operational. Next slide, please. So, and what were the successes of the BRT at the time it became operational? So we had average journey time was improved by as much as 40%. That's from Ikorodu Road to Marina on that particular corridor. And then also, Danfo would normally break the journey into 3. So if you're going from Ikorodu to Marina, they first take you from Ikorodu to somewhere in mile 2 or Jota. Then from there, they take another one to Friday, then before taking another one to Marina. All of that was eliminated because now you have a direct straight route, and then the transport cost also went down by 30%. Accident rate also reduced because initially you have fragmented number of buses on the corridor, so which of course increased the propensity for number of accidents. But with the HOV high capacity buses that were deployed for the BRT operation, number of accidents also went down from 136 to about 96 per vehicle. Then employment also, over 2,000 new jobs were created in terms of number of drivers, bus attendants, even the depot activity. There's a whole lot of activity going on at night. So when these buses get to the depot every night, we have to wash them. People are going to clean the buses, they're going to be fueled, mechanics are going to check the engines. So again, it triggered a new set of employment and opportunity, and also skill and training. In terms of environment, CO2 gas was also reduced, because it's a case of one HOV bus replacing about 5 Danfo, and therefore it's reducing the number of emissions that we have on the road. So then, of course, we also have some of the problems that the BRT buses within a year also become saturated because of high demand. So our people wanted something new. Then one of the things government they have done over time now is to bring in air-conditioned buses. So that's part of the improvement that we have seen even before 2019. Up until 2018, it was still the buses that were no air conditioned. But from 2019 upward, we've seen all over Lagos now, things that's happening. We have buses that have Wi-Fi, we have buses that have air conditioning. So things have, again, improved. We have over close to 1,000 of those buses within Lagos system now. So consistently, improvement over years has been the trademark of what we see within public transport within Lagos. And in terms of the enforcement also, we also have last mile, in fact, a dedicated last mile route where people now who are monitoring the BRT corridor and then ensuring that people are not using the BRT corridors, that are not, or the authorized people are not using them. Then we also notice a number of people also shift from Danfo to BRT. That has been very encouraging because of the comfort, the travel time, the reduction in price. So that is attracted a lot of people to move from the conventional Danfo to BRT. Next slide. So now, these are the basic achievements that we can say today. So we've replaced, in terms of replacement, there are now close to, 1,000. We haven't achieved 5,000, but I can say confidently over 5,000 mini HOVs and minibus that have been procured. And then the BRT lines have also been completed up to Ikorodu. Initially, it was from Marina to mile 2, and then second phase from mile 2 to Ikorodu, and that is running well now. So again, about close to 1,000 buses are doing that. Then we also have staff training, a lot of training for drivers and bus attendants. Some of us have had some of the ugly experience that we had recently. Again, it's because we have a CCTV system. That's why some of those bad drivers have been able to pick. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. You always have drivers doing some bad behavior as well, but continuous training, operational improvement, CCTV, security, all of these things have been improved on a daily basis, and we can discover the bad acts among them. And then I also mentioned something about digitalization. So today, almost all the buses in Lagos, what you have is what we call cowrie card. So everybody's using cowrie card, to board everywhere you're going. So you can't even pay cash. It's become full cashless system at the moment. And then government have also licensed operators into different routes. If you look at Oshodi Transport Institute, for instance, from there's a different operator running from Oshodi to Igbo. There's a different operator running to Abule Egba BRT. There's a different operator running to Mile 2. So it's again part of the things that government have done to improve the efficiency of the bus transport system. Go ahead, next step. Yeah, so in terms of key lessons from Lagos experience, I can say that one of the most crucial things for any transport system to work is political support, and it has to be driven from the top level. So you always have to have the head of authority, whether it's the state, you must have the governor's backing. Because transport affects everybody, and therefore you can't do it, you can't be successful without direct government support and political backing. And then, of course, we also have to learn from global best practices. I remember that before the BRT was set up, a lot of studies were done, put out to different countries, including Bogota, Brazil, Chile, to go and see what the BRT looked like, including taking some of the downfield drivers and the executives. They were sponsored on a different country tour so that they can see what we are talking about. And when they saw it, it was easy for them to buy into the project and then say, well, if this is what you are talking about, they were interested. And they also noticed that there's no economic displacement for them. So it was easy for them to easily accept the scheme and then key into it as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, one of the approach we also adopted was to start this project on an incremental basis. So that reduces the risk of disruption, because the BRT as a project is very big. And you're talking of Lagos, like city like Lagos. So it was done on an incremental basis. So the first one was what we call BRT Light. Basic BRT, put the depot, put the bus lane, and then put the terminals in place at the basic level. That was the first one that was launched in 2007. So fast forward again, another 4 years, what you noticed was that it was then extended to Ikorodu. And from then on, at the beginning, the buses that was, started with were the buses without air condition. So over time, again, another 4 years, the buses were upgraded to air-conditioned buses. After that, we then also have CCTV along some of the corridors again, which are another improvement. Along the line, the system also grew from paper system to cashless system that we have today. So there's been a small incremental improvement over time, and that is still ongoing. Government is now also expanding the business, expanding the service to different parts of the city. So it's all part of the process by which you don't want to take on the whole thing at the same time, but you keep learning. So you take a step and then you learn from it, then you improve again, and then until you catch up with the global best practices. Today, we can confidently say that in Lagos, the bus system is so good that you can have air-conditioned buses, you can have a cashless system, you can even have app that allow you to see when the buses will arrive. We have that as well, ITS. It's already being used on the Ikorodu Road as well. So it's been slow, steady, consistent progress over time. And in terms of the challenges, yes, we are serving people. So you always going to ask for more. So people are always asking for more in terms of services, in terms of traffic. So traffic is still a big problem within the city, because the BRT service is still growing. Lagos needs so much. You can't rely only on buses. And I'm happy that current administration is also taking steps to diversify the transport system away from bus. Now there's a lot of improvement also on the water transport, a lot of improvement also on the railway. 2 rail lines are currently ongoing. By the time those come on stream, then there'll be a lot of relief, and then buses can arrive on time and things can get, of course, transport system can get better within Lagos. And the last point to look at, of course, integration, which is what I mentioned now, towards getting all of this to form an integrated transport system within Lagos. And I think that's the goal of the government, so that the STMP, the Strategic Transport Master Plan that was developed in 2015, can then be realized. Next slide. So thank you very much. We're happy to take question and answer at this point.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, Bjorn. Thank you for joining us. I'm really glad you were able to be here. So we're just going to go back to the Q&A and also to our attendees. Please, we've accumulated quite a few questions in the chat. So I encourage you to either use the Q&A function or put your questions directly in the chat. Now, just to start with a general question for everybody on the panel, inspired by something that Bjorn almost ended with, transportation is for everybody, right? And I'm a historian, and I wonder, can each of you on the panel maybe reflect on this idea of, the context for the work that you're doing and your methodology? And to go back to Bjorn's point, these are all heavily gendered projects. What is the role of women or gender in the ways that you do your method, or your research and methodology, or how transportation actually unfolds in Lagos? So to give everybody an opportunity. So for instance, Felix, you talk a lot about criminality, but I wonder if you have something to say about criminalization of these young men who are in the streets. So if you go around the panel, and then we'll come back to all the questions. So method, gender, women, criminalization, and transportation in Lagos. Any reflections on those? Feel free to jump in, anyone.
Livability, the question was rather for Felix or for everybody? Or?
For all of you, do you want to reflect something about your methodology or about the context for this project and how gender or your methodology affected the kind of work that you presented today? So that everybody can answer a question and comment, and then we'll go into the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I don't know. Felix, maybe you would like to start.
Okay, basically, my methodology is both, like I said at the beginning, my studies, both an ethnographic report. So based on my experiences I've had, and also what I've experienced, since 1990s, my parents lost their livelihoods and savings due to the activities of criminals, actually in Lagos. So what I did is my study combined ethnographic data, feed notes, participant and non-participant observation. I had a series of interviews with the hawkers themselves, and across gender. Of course, majority of the people involved in the hawking sector are male, the female gender, and even a few of them are actually not much involved in criminality. So I also interface with most of the area boys, in their specific hideouts or hangouts, where they take their India hemp and all manner of drugs. And I blended with them, not as a scholar, not as it was, I related with them. It was an ethnographic research. So I was able to interact with some of them, and also at the correctional centers, in some of the prisons where some of the convicted criminals actually serving their jail terms. I was also able to interview some of the ex-convicts, so who gave me raw data about the operations and the dynamics of criminality in Lagos. Basically, I also relied extensively on criminal reports from the High Court and the Lagos State Police. I interfaced with the Commissioner of Police, that gave me access to their archives. So a lot of archival sources were also used during the study, basically, for now.
Okay, thank you. Oliver, would you like to answer, or Laurent, and then we'll move on?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think is missing to an extent that, yeah, upon reflection on this paper, like, it is something I think I would want to bring out again if I was writing it more, right? We're now looking at the role of gender in transport a lot more since when we initially had looked at this work. I think we talk about things, like safety, and which I suppose is which is something that influences women taking transport more than men, I would say, particularly kind of bus transport and overcrowded transport, right? There are certain ills that affect women more than men, and I think it's maybe broadly discussed in the paper, but definitely I have reflection on this before. I would want to kind of bring it out more, as we think about how transport really does, and the access to opportunity and that it provides needs different things. Requires different things, right, for men and for women. And I think something again, there's three male authors kind of looking at quite a male orientated, infrastructure is a very kind of male orientated area, and transport generally, and buses and things, that there is a certain lens there. And it's, as I said, from when we were doing this work to the kind of work that I'm commissioning and looking at now, it's my view has changed, and I think I'd want to draw that out more explicitly in the paper, because it's touched upon, but without that gendered lens as much as I think we need to do more so.
Laurent or Bjorn?
Yes. Well, I mean, to be honest, I'm not quite sure that so much of gender disparity or gap in transportation, from public transportation, from my experience. I'm not quite sure, because most of the infrastructure that we provided have been used by both genders successfully, and there has not been any form of discrimination or any form of reports. And then of course, when you get to some of the terminals, for instance, we do have public convenience for both genders, and we haven't had any issue. In fact, that's the area of operations. Another thing that has happened also is that we've also, I think, seen female drivers also. Maybe that's one area where we might have to look at to see if we can include more women, in the area of providing access to job opportunities. But I know that a lot of them in the soft aspect of this work, including the bus attendants, there are a lot of more women there. But bus driving, I think, yes, it's very, very proportionally low, maybe because of the hectic nature of the work. But nevertheless, we can also encourage women that are interested. Then another interesting thing is that the current managing director of Lamata, which is the biggest regulatory authority in Nigeria and perhaps Africa, is a woman. So I believe we're getting there. But so far we haven't had that as a major issue. But I think the one I can remember on top of my head at the moment is is the area of employment, and of course employment of maybe some of the drivers. But other ones, I think ticketers, people that the area of bus attendants and stuff, women are very well employed in those areas. In terms of business opportunities, in terms of employment opportunities, I think women are given their fair share, in my own view. So the only area that I might comment on is maybe the bus drivers. So, yeah.
Ademir, you have the right question, actually. All the motor parks run by NRCW, all the downfall motor parks are run by male, actually. I mean, most of the people I met, and more than 100 people, they are all male. So working for EXCO, working in the EXCO, I've not interviewed so many drivers, but for the EXCO and the AGBERO, they are not 100% male, but almost. And of course, I mean, they are coming from very different background, but most of the time they are either drivers or either without a job. So I've met only one woman, and she was part of the EXCO in one of the motor parks in Noshodi, and she was part of the EXCO also because she first started as a market woman close to the motor park and get to socialize with the union leaders and get integrated into the union leaders. And she has quite an important position in that motor park, but it's very exceptional. Coming back to the method, maybe in a minute. So this is purely not light ethnography in the sense that it's interviews mainly and observation, but it's light in the sense that, okay, I spent just a few months, and it's not deep ethnography like anthropologists understand that. And it's really looking at how it works on a daily basis. And okay, so maybe I can jump onto the question, because it was the fact of being white and doing that kind of ethnography, which is it interesting, or is it is it easier? So I'm not sure. I'm not the first one to do that. Albert did that. Daniel Agbiboa did that, and they did it not exactly the same way, but they were able to access those union members on their own. Initially, they were very suspicious when I came. They were very suspicious because they thought that I was one of the BRT guys. And they don't like this. I mean, at the bottom level, I mean, the union, because I mean, the BRT take part of the business. And so they thought that I was one of the consultants for one of the big companies working for the BRT. So I said, no, I'm just a researcher. So that's played a role. And so with time, I was able to, and with the two Joseph helping me, I mean, it was also a matter of getting trust from the people I interviewed. I mean, there is an incredible idea, and I shared it, about the danger of being in a motor park in Nigeria. You know, the violence associated to it, the kind of agbero always considered as just, you know, area boys, delinquents, a kind of criminalization of. But actually, I met only very nice people, very welcoming people, not educated. That's also a major thing. So there is a class thing in that. In that also appreciation of this people working in the union. Yeah, so being white was probably sometimes a vantage point. At what point, for instance, an important union leader suggested me that I wrote his biography, and at other times they were probably more suspicious. So I cannot have a final answer.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So Felix, you have a couple of questions from Tolulope Akinwale. He says, thank you for the presentation. I'm interested in interaction between the Lagos state government and hawkers, and in the ways in which paying attention to this could further extend your analysis. As you know, or may know, Lagos government has launched counterattacks on itinerant hawkers in its bid to, quote, clean up Lagos. Could this have influenced the government officials' narratives about the itinerant traders? So that's in the chat. And he also wonders, or he or she also wonders, in your response to your point about fast wealth, if you could offer some kind of theory around fast wealth, given the lack of opportunities that you admit for these young men in your own presentation. Over to you. Okay,
thank you. Yeah, I actually admit Tolulope's assertion that the Lagos state government, has actually launched a series of attacks. So they want to get these guys off the streets. They constituting a serious menace on the streets. Coupled with the fact that Lagos, is probably transforming the agenda of transforming Lagos into a smart city. So having the hawkers operating on the street, doesn't conform. I think that is the underlying issue, not that their involvement in criminality. Yeah, quite a number of them are involved. Even by the level of prosecution and reports that are actually coming out, majority of them are involved in they are culpable. But that is not to say that these are coping strategies. These are the only way in which crime has actually been reduced, relatively in Lagos, because the industry actually has been able to absorb a large number of people, especially the migrants and the hoodlums, the guys who have been neglected by the government over the years. So especially the migrants coming from the eastern part of Nigeria, have nothing to do in Lagos than to go to the traffic to Ozu, basically. So it's not just about an attack from the government, but it's about also the issue of clean up Lagos, for its own personal agenda. I also interacted with Lagos State government. There are also a series of activities, nefarious activities on the part of these hawkers. For example, when I went to Mobolaji Johnson up to Ikeja under bridge, I encountered several locations where some of these hawkers actually stored ammunition where they use for their obnoxious activities at night. So attack commuters, people whose vehicle got stranded on the way, took their laptops and all of that. So these are very factual evidence. So I want to talk about the fast wealth. So it is very, very important to note that pickpocketing, is an organized crime in Lagos. It's more lucrative, it's more rewarding even than what a professor or an accountant will earn. So, and I mentioned that the reason for the transformation of pickpocketing in this dimension is the influx of sophisticated mobile devices. So, for example, an iPhone, I interviewed most of my respondents who they are students, university undergraduates and working class people who actually have flair for iPhones. So the cost of iPhones in Nigerian society, an iPhone would cost above 500,000 naira, the least in the Nigerian society. And from my interaction with some of these convicts, someone told me that he realizes more than 1 million naira at times within a week or two. So if a pickpocket is able to grab about 3 iPhones in a week, that's a lot of money. So it's an organized crime. One of the major merchants, merchant of phone, stolen phones in Computer Village is named Dagod. The guy has properties that worth millions of money. What he does is to buy. He has a very, very organized, links with all the pickpocket and robbers in Lagos. So they have a way of bringing all of these sophisticated gadgets and laptops and brain box of vehicles that were vandalized. So he has a way of collecting them from there at Fagba, and has a shop in Computer Village and Ladipo where all of these are sold or packaged as UK, London used devices. So most of these guys will tell you that they make about more than 2.5 million naira in a month. What a professor or a decent civil servant in Nigerian society can. So that is where the idea of fast wealth is coming from. So it's
Thank you, Felix.
And please, could you allow me the most fundamental aspect?
Actually, Felix, we'll come back to you. We only have 5 more minutes. I want to give Oliver an opportunity to expand on Hassan's question. So Oliver, thank you for beginning the response. Would you like to expand on this? Would you like to speak about it? In what ways have the operations of the BRT affected the activities of Danfo drivers in Lagos? Or maybe Biodo can respond.
Okay, you want me to respond to that?
Yes, please. So we'll give everybody an opportunity to speak.
Okay, concerning the impact of the BRT operation on the Danfo drivers.
Yes.
Okay, well, like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we did in the concept of the BRT was to avoid exclusion and displacement, both in terms of job and of course, income and opportunities. So a lot of the Danfo drivers, first of all, were incorporated into union, and then
it's 3 minutes more until 9. Someone is raising their hand for a question, I think. So maybe we should just take questions for the meantime. Time is on our side. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you to our LSA hosts there. Okay. So Biodo, if you could round up your answer also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So as I said, so most of the drivers, first of all, were trained and engaged as the BRT drivers. So that was the first line of inclusion. So because government does not have to go and bring drivers elsewhere, so the same set of drivers were trained, screened, and then of course, trained to then be the BRT drivers in the new BRT scheme. Also in terms of the ownership of the buses, it's the same set of drivers forming an association union. Of course, government provided a guarantee. And so on the basis of that guarantee, banks lent to them, and then they were able to acquire the buses that are used for the first set of BRT. So there was no economic displacement in any form, whether any of them lose jobs. Rather, they upgraded themselves from low skill, Danfo, rickety vehicles to now brand new vehicles with low maintenance and easy to drive. So that's my response to that.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Oliver, to responding to the question in the chat. Suraju, are you able to unmute yourself and ask your question, or can you put it in the chat? I see your hand now, but I don't see a question from you. Okay, so there is no response. We have about 1 more minute. Felix, okay, yes, okay, you've been promoted. Suraju, can you ask your question? Yes, please.
Good evening, Chairman and co-panelists. My question is directed at Mr. Biodo. I must commend the Lagos State government for what they have done in the area of transportation, especially in BRT. I observed that phase 3 of the BRT project is ongoing along Oshodi Abule-Egba corridors. But I observed that the progress made is very, very slow. I would like Abiodun to tell us the efforts the state government is making to finish the project. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you for the very brief question. Biodo, can you respond very briefly so we can round up?
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, first of all, I must provide a clarification. I'm not an official of Lagos State government, so I can't speak on their behalf, but I happen to work on the side as service provider in terms of consulting and of course, construction within the transport sector. So I know a lot about what is happening. So when I speak, I don't speak for government. So I think that clarification is important. But I will say that I know that that BRT is completed and it's operational up until Abule Egba Oshodi. That I'm aware. So I see the buses running from Abule Egba to Oshodi and they dovetail into the Oshodi terminal. And then they stop at Abule Egba by the flyover. And then there are stops along the corridor. You know, so I don't know whether the impression that it's not been completed. No, it was commissioned, I think, about 2 years ago by His Excellency Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. So I'm aware that the BRT is operational and is running, and there are well over 50 buses running on that corridor. And then there's also it's a cardless system, and there's a cowrie card that is being used. So it's ongoing, you know. But the only problem you have is that there are other construction work along that corridor, which is a rail project. The red line is also along the same corridor. Maybe that's where you get the impression that the project is not completed. As far as I know, that project is completed and it's running at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Well, folks, incredibly enough, we have run out of time. Thank you for these really stimulating presentations. Thank you to our panelists for asking questions and for everybody for coming. Everyone's email is listed in the program, so you can follow up with anyone with questions that you have. Thank you all for being here, and I wish you all a wonderful afternoon, evening, or whatever time it is where you are. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you so much.
Have a nice day, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Everyone. Bye. Thank you.